Excuse me, sir, but what you just said is a linguistic trap. If they sign, they'll lose control of everything. The room froze. A dozen suits turned their heads in perfect unison. Some blinked in disbelief. Others narrowed their eyes, unsure who had dared to interrupt the most powerful man in the room. At the far end of the long marble conference table sat Sheikh Hassan al-Rashid, his impeccably tailored gray suit reflecting the soft chandelier light. His words, spoken seconds earlier in a dialect of Arabic unfamiliar to most American ears, still hung in the air like a smoke. Nobody had noticed until it stung. The voice had come from the side wall, not from any of the translators or the legal team, or even the row of executive assistants silently typing notes. It had come from a woman holding a silver tray of bottled water, standing straight, her back to the wall like she'd trained herself to disappear. Her name tag read, Maya. Maya Williams. Didn't flinch under the dozen startled stares. Her hand didn't shake. She gently placed the water on the nearby table, straightened her posture, and met Sheikh Hassan's gaze. Not confrontational, calm, focused, certain. He studied her. The quiet arrogance of a man used to being the smartest in the room faltered for a second. Only a second. "You speak Arabic?" he asked, switching to English now, his tone sharp but composed. Maya responded in Arabic, the same dialect he had just used. "And I understand the difference between intention and manipulation, Your Excellency." Someone gasped. A white-haired partner from Landstone Holdings leaned back in his leather chair, flustered. "Is she even on the staff?" "She's a server," someone whispered. Danielle ignored them. Her eyes remained on the Sheikh. "What you just said, will leave the option open for adjustment based on local compliance," was interpreted as benign, but the way you phrased it implies you can override any decision retroactively. That's not a safety clause. It's an override clause. The translator beside Sheikh Hassan looked down at his notes, visibly sweating. "Do you have legal training?" the Sheikh asked. "I have a master's degree in international finance," she replied, still in Arabic. "And I worked 3 years for an investment board in Abu Dhabi before returning to care for my mother." The Sheikh's eyes hardened. "You interrupt my statement in front of my counterparts, then accuse me of deception? This is disrespectful." Maya's lips tightened, but she stood firm. "I meant no disrespect, sir. Only clarity. You are not part of this negotiation." "You are a maid," he said coldly. "Security should escort her out." Maya felt heat surge up her neck. Across the table, someone muttered, "Let her speak. She might be right." Another voice, Robert Malloy from Landstone, intervened with cautious diplomacy. "Your Excellency, perhaps we should clarify the clause before proceeding for everyone's confidence." The Sheikh didn't respond immediately. His gaze bore into Maya. Then, with a wave of his hand, he dismissed the idea of removing her. But he did not apologize. "You worked in Abu Dhabi?" he asked. "Yes." "Where?" "The National Sovereign Fund, Internal Risk Review Division." The Sheikh tilted his head. "You're not just a maid." "No," Maya said quietly. "But that's what pays the bills right now." He didn't smile, but he nodded once, then turned to his translator. "How long have you known she was right?" The man froze. I thought leave," Hassan said. The translator hurried out, briefcase flapping. Maya stood still, unsure what to do now. She could feel her heart pounding, the heat rising in her neck. Was she about to be thanked or fired? The Sheikh turned to Malloy. "This meeting ice over. We will reconvene when your team has someone capable of understanding the documents. But we. Tomorrow, noon." He stood. Maya quietly exited, walking down the long, echoing corridor toward the staff elevator. She passed a few junior analysts, all too stunned to look her in the eye. As the elevator doors closed behind her, her shoulders finally sagged. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, she hadn't let herself disappear, and someone important had listened. Maya stepped out into the back hallway of the Empire Grand Hotel, the heavy door closing behind her with a thud that echoed like final judgment. She walked quickly, not stopping until she reached the service elevator. As the numbers lit up one by one, descending from the top floor, her hands trembled. She clenched them into fists and forced herself to breathe deeply. One breath in, one breath out. She had just challenged one of the wealthiest men in the world in front of a dozen powerful executives, and now she was standing next to a mop bucket. The elevator opened. Inside stood Carmen, one of the housekeepers. Her eyes widened when she saw Maya. "Girl, what did you do up there? Half the kitchen's buzzing." Maya gave a tight smile. "I might have said a little too much." Carmen tilted her head. "Too much or just enough?" "I don't know yet," Maya said as the elevator descended. "Maybe both." They rode in silence for a moment. Then Carmen touched her arm gently. "You did what you had to. You looked out for them even if they didn't know they needed it." Maya nodded. She wanted to believe that, but reality was more complicated. When she got back to the employee locker room, her supervisor, Mr. Jenkins, was waiting. He looked like he'd been sweating bullets for 20 minutes. "You're on thin ice," he said without even a greeting. "I've already got 3 calls from upper management." "I wasn't trying to cause trouble," Maya said. "I overheard something dangerous. I spoke up." "You spoke out of turn. That was a multi-billion-dollar meeting." He paced. "You embarrassed them. You embarrassed this hotel." "No," Maya said, voice calm, "I protected them from signing away their rights." He paused. "Be that as it may, Maya, you can't just..." A new voice interrupted, "She stays." Both of them turned. Standing in the doorway was Veronica Ellison, the hotel's general manager. Tall, with silver-streaked hair and a commanding presence, she was rarely seen outside her corner office. Now, she stepped into the room like a judge descending into court. Miss Williams showed more insight in 5 minutes than some lawyers do in 5 months, Veronica continued. "She'll not be punished for that." Mr. Jenkins sputtered but didn't argue. Veronica looked at Maya. "You're off floor duties for the rest of the day. Come to my office at 3 o'clock. Maya nodded slowly, stunned. Veronica walked away without another word. At 2:55, Maya stood outside the office on the 31st floor, her palms slick with sweat. She smoothed down her uniform, suddenly aware of the faded stitching on the collar. When Veronica opened the door, Maya stepped inside cautiously. The room was minimalist but elegant, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Hudson. Framed awards lined the wall. A single photo on the desk showed Veronica shaking hands with President Carter decades ago. Sit, she said. Maya obeyed. Veronica studied her. You worked in Abu Dhabi? Yes. Ma'am. Why did you leave? My mother got sick, I came back to help. Then after she passed. Well, the gap on my resume scared people. They stopped seeing my degrees, just saw my skin. My name. Veronica nodded. That's the world. But today, you made the right people notice. Maya said nothing. I looked you up, Veronica said, tapping her keyboard. National Sovereign Fund, 3 years. Oversaw risk compliance for contracts over $100 million. Yes. You could have walked away today. Let them sign, let them fall. Maya looked down. I couldn't. I knew what that clause meant. Veronica leaned back. You want back in? Maya blinked, back. In? The real world, the table. You've still got the mind, the spine. What you lack is opportunity. Let's change that. Maya sat back stunned. I don't know. I haven't touched a legal document in years. That didn't stop you from saving a deal. Veronica stood and handed her a thick binder. This is the draft contract they were reviewing. Annotate it. Show me where the problems are. You have 24 hours. Maya clutched the binder like a life raft. Thank you. As she stood to leave, Veronica added, and Maya, what you did took courage. That kind of courage doesn't go unnoticed. Back in the staff lounge, Carmen stared at the binder in Maya's hands like it was made of gold. Girl, is that what I think it is? I think I'm being tested. No. Baby, Carmen said with a proud smile, you're being seen. Maya stayed up late that night. She brewed a pot of tea, sat at the tiny kitchen table in her one-bedroom apartment and spread out the binder with sticky notes, highlighters, and a pen that had belonged to her mother. Her living room light flickered every now and then, and the radiator clanged like an old man coughing in the corner. But Maya didn't care. Clause by clause, she dug through the document. The same patterns emerged: strategic ambiguity, retroactive language, ownership displacement disguised as partnership. If you feel inspired by Maya's courage to stand up for what's right, tap that like button and tell us in the comments, where are you watching this from? You never know. Someone nearby might be watching with you too. Her back ached and her eyes blurred. At midnight, she poured herself another cup of tea and stared out the window. The city glowed beneath a sky smeared with orange haze. Somewhere out there, the world was shifting, and maybe, just maybe, she was shifting with it. The next morning, Maya stood once again outside Veronica Ellison's office. She hadn't slept more than 3 hours, but adrenaline carried her up the elevator, past the polished brass plaques and marble columns, and now to this moment. She clutched the annotated binder to her chest like it held her future, because it just might. Veronica looked up as she entered. You're early, she said, glancing at the clock. I finished it, Maya said, placing the binder on the desk. I flagged 10 sections with potential manipulation, 5 with cultural misinterpretation, and 3 with legal overreach that could trigger international arbitration. Veronica raised an eyebrow. You worked all night? Maya didn't answer directly. It's cleaner now, but if they had signed yesterday, it would have been a disaster. Veronica opened the binder and flipped through the pages. Her expression stayed unreadable, but Maya noticed the occasional pause, one at a margin note referencing Article 14. Of the Foreign Investment Act, another next to a clause marked, ambiguous authority handover. You've still got it, Veronica finally said, closing the binder gently. Maya breathed out slowly, her hands clasped in her lap. You remind me of someone, Veronica continued. Your father, James Williams. Maya's heart skipped. You knew my father? I did. He was the one who wrote the emergency financial reform proposals in the 90s. Quiet man, brilliant mind. Never took credit. A lump rose in Maya's throat. He used to say justice was a long road, but someone had to start walking. Veronica smiled faintly. Seems you inherited more than his eyes. There was a soft knock at the door. An assistant peeked in. Ma'am, the Sheikh's liaison is here. They've requested Maya be present at the noon renegotiation. Maya's eyes widened. What? Veronica stood. It appears your voice carries further than you thought. Maya entered the conference room at 12:01 p.m., this time not as a server but as a consultant. Her uniform had been replaced with a conservative gray dress, a leather binder in hand. She walked past the same men who had looked through her the day before. Now their eyes followed her, unsure. Some skeptical, others respectful. Sheikh Hassan sat at the head of the table. This time there was no translator beside him. He greeted her with a nod. Miss Williams. Maya replied in Arabic, Your Excellency. There was a flicker of a smile. He gestured for her to sit near him. Robert Malloy, looking more rumpled than usual, shifted in his chair. We've reviewed the contract and acknowledged that certain clauses need clarification. With Miss Williams' input, we hope to reach mutual understanding. The negotiation began. Maya spoke sparingly only when asked. But each time she did, the tension in the room shifted. Her tone was professional but direct, pointing out areas of friction and offering culturally respectful revisions. She translated between legal intent and diplomatic nuance, restoring equilibrium to a room that had nearly collapsed under misunderstanding. 2 hours in, the meeting paused for refreshments. Maya stepped into the hallway needing air. As she leaned against the cool stone wall, a voice behind her said, You don't belong here. She turned. A tall man in a dark suit, Michael Trent, Jr., partner at Landstone, stood with arms crossed. Excuse me? Maya replied. You're not part of this deal. You don't have clearance, and you sure as hell don't have a seat at this table just because you corrected one sentence. Maya didn't respond immediately. She simply looked at him calm, composed. My clearance, she said softly, is written in the footnotes you ignored. Before he could answer, Veronica appeared beside them. Mr. Trent, if you have concerns about staff assignments, you can take them up with me. Trent mumbled something and walked off. Veronica turned to Maya. You okay? Maya nodded. He's just afraid of change. Good. Veronica said. Because change is happening, and it's looking right at you. Back in the room. The tone had shifted. Sheikh Hassan leaned forward as Maya explained how to reword the compliance clause. She used a metaphor from Arabic literature about planting olive trees in soil foreign to them but tending them with care. He listened, then nodded. You speak with more than language, he said. You speak with understanding. By the end of the meeting, both sides had agreed to rewrite the contract. No one said it out loud, but the room knew Maya had brokered the balance. As the executives filed out, Sheikh Hassan remained seated. Maya, he said. You spoke truth to power yesterday. That is dangerous and rare. She bowed her head. I didn't plan to speak. I just couldn't stay quiet. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a coin. In our culture, when someone saves a negotiation, we give them a token not as payment but as memory. He placed the coin in her palm. It was old, etched with Arabic script and worn at the edges. Thank you, she said quietly. Later that night as Maya returned home, she placed the coin next to her father's photo on the bookshelf. The light from the lamp caught the metal just right, casting a long shadow behind it. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen, and more than that, she felt remembered. 2 days after the renegotiation, Maya Williams found herself walking into a room she never imagined entering. It wasn't the conference hall or Veronica's office or even the towering suite of the Sheikh. It was the legal department on the 35th floor behind a biometric door she had once walked past, carrying a tray of bottled water. Now, she was stepping in with a clearance badge and a fresh ID clipped to her blazer. Inside, the room buzzed with the sound of controlled chaos, legal analysts murmuring over contract printouts, assistants typing notes, a dry erase board filled with flow charts and deadlines. As Maya entered, half a dozen heads turned. Some eyes narrowed with skepticism. Others simply blinked, surprised. At the far end of the room stood a familiar figure, Veronica Ellison, flanked by Harold Keene, the firm's senior legal counsel. Maya, Veronica said, her voice crisp. Glad you're here. We're reviewing preliminary drafts for the next 2 joint ventures with the Sheikh's firm. We'd like you to audit the equity clauses. Harold looked at Maya with raised eyebrows. You're not a licensed attorney. I'm a licensed analyst with expertise in cross-border finance and risk compliance, Maya replied calmly. I don't need to argue the law. I just need to flag the traps. He gave a noncommittal grunt and returned to the documents. As Maya settled into a desk beside the legal team, her fingers ran over the surface of the polished mahogany. She remembered wiping tables like this just a few weeks ago. Now, she was reviewing documents that could impact millions. But the transition wasn't without friction. Hours into her audit, a junior analyst named Cynthia leaned over. Just curious, she said in a low voice. How does one go from housekeeping to high table? That's some kind of DEI initiative? Maya kept her eyes on the page. I guess when you know what a trap clause looks like in Arabic, the door opens. Cynthia chuckled bitterly and turned away. Maya took a breath. She wasn't here to prove anything. She was here because they had failed to see what mattered, and she hadn't. By late afternoon, Maya flagged 3 major inconsistencies. One clause shifted liability in the event of market fluctuations, potentially exposing the hotel to foreign lawsuits. Another subtly restructured control rights under the guise of flexibility, and the third buried deep in the IP licensing implied a surrender of brand usage in perpetuity. She emailed her notes to Veronica, then walked down to the cafe in the lobby for a moment of peace. As she stirred her tea, a man approached. He wore a tailored navy suit and carried a leather briefcase embossed with gold initials. Maya recognized him. Philip Warren, external counsel and longtime advisor to Landstone Holdings. You made quite the impression, he said as he sat across from her. Without asking. I'm just doing my job. Philip leaned in. I've read your annotations. They're sharp. Some might even say aggressive. Maya gave him a level look. Some might say effective. He smiled faintly. You're stepping on some very old toes, Miss Williams. Just be careful where you aim your heels. Maya set her teacup down. I don't aim to step on anyone. But I won't walk around traps to protect egos. Philip nodded slowly. Fair enough. But in this city, truth has sharp edges, and it tends to cut the ones who carry it. With that, he stood and walked off. That evening, Maya received a message from Veronica. A private meeting, 7:00 p.m., top floor. She arrived at the penthouse suite, unsure what to expect. When the doors opened, she was greeted by candlelight, classical jazz, and the Sheikh himself seated near the balcony. He rose. Maya, please sit. She hesitated. I didn't know this would be private. Yes. It had to be. Too many ears downstairs. She sat across from him. I wanted to thank you, he said. We finalized the amended contracts today. Because of you, we avoided a future war. Maya inclined her head. I just did what anyone with a conscience would. No, he said softly. Most would stay silent. You challenged me publicly, and you were right. A long pause stretched between them. Then he added, I've had many advisors, few I trust, fewer I remember. Maya smiled politely. I'm not looking to be remembered, just useful. He chuckled. Then allow me to offer something useful in return. He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a contract consulting work with his firm's U.S. division, a generous retainer, remote flexibility, full access to global teams. I can't. Maya started. You already have, he said. This is just formalizing what you've proven. She held the contract with careful hands. It was more than a job. It was recognition, redemption. Later, as she stood outside under the night sky, the wind brushing her cheeks, Maya looked up at the glowing windows above Manhattan. Just weeks ago, she was wiping fingerprints off glass in those offices. Now, she was rewriting what went on inside them. The battle wasn't over, not by a long shot, but for the first time, she had a seat at the table, and she wasn't giving it up. 3 days into her new consulting role, Maya Williams arrived early at the downtown office of Al Rashid Capital's American branch. The building, with its black glass exterior and sleek marble lobby, buzzed with quiet precision. Maya wore a charcoal blazer and soft leather flats. Practical. Confident. She carried a tablet loaded with reports and a mind sharpened by years of silence and watching. But she wasn't just seen now, she was being watched. It began subtly. Files she requested disappeared for hours before reappearing incomplete. Her badge access would glitch at certain doors, forcing her to wait until a receptionist fixed it. Comments were passed in hushed tones when she walked by. Not all of it was overtly hostile, but it was clear someone didn't like her there. Still, Maya pushed forward. That morning, she sat across from Amal Farid, a risk analyst from Dubai who had flown in to help onboard Maya. Amal was quiet but efficient, with a graceful demeanor and a sharp mind. As they combed through a logistics memorandum, Amal glanced up. You know, they expected you to take the money and fade. Maya looked up. Who's they? The board. Legal. Half of your floor. Amal smiled softly. Instead, you came in and asked for the source documents. Oh, I don't the symbolics appointments. Clearly. They returned to their work. But the air around them shifted, charged with mutual respect. Later that afternoon, Maya stepped into the copy room for a quick print job. As the machine hummed, she heard two voices outside the door. I'm telling you, she's digging too deep. She was supposed to nod politely, not question the Zurich transfer. She flagged it to Veronica. If it goes to compliance. The voices trailed off as the speakers walked away. Maya froze. Zurich transfer? She hadn't reviewed any documents mentioning Zurich. She returned to her desk, pulse racing. That night, in her small apartment, she opened her laptop and dug through archived documents the system still let her access. Using a search filter, she typed Zurich. One result popped up. Buried in the footnotes of a miscellaneous assets file tied to a Shell subsidiary. The amount was staggering, $23 million marked as environmental reallocation. But there was no project attached. No timeline, no signatures, just a reference code and a transaction path that looped through 3 countries. Maya leaned